My husband's ex-wife showed up at my hospital bed because the nurse called the number under emergency contact. The room was 68 degrees. I remember because I kept STA ring at the thermostat on the wall. I had my phone in my hand, a silver iPhone 14 Pro, and I was trying to read a work email about a vendor contract. My right ankle was elevated in a sling. I'd fallen down the basement stairs the night before and had surgery to put a plate in. The nurse said I was lucky I didn't break my hip. I said I was 47, not 87. She laughed. Then she left and the door swung shut and I was alone with the beeping of the HRT monitor and the email about the vendor contract and the weird cold air coming from the vent above my head. The door opened again. I thought it was the nurse with the pain medication. It was a woman I'd only ever seen in photographs. She was shorter than I expected. Blonde hair cut in a Shaw RP line at her jaw. A black wool coat that cost more than my first CAR. She stood in the doorway like she owned the building. You must be Elena, she said. I'm Helen, Peter's ex-wife. She stepped inside and pulled a chair next to my bed. She sat down. She put her purse on the floor. She crossed her legs and folded her hands on her knee and smiled at me with the calm of someone who had done this before. The hospital called me, she said. I'm still listed as his emergency contact. He never changed it. That's how it STA route. A Thursday afternoon in February, me in a hospital gown with my leg in the air and a woman I'd never met sitting next to me, telling me she was the one the hospital called when I almost broke my neck. She didn't stay long. That's the thing I think about now. She stayed about 8 minutes. She asked how I was feeling. She asked what happened. She told me Peter was in a meeting and couldn't take the call, so she came instead. She said it like it was normal. Like she was doing me a favor. Like she was the one who made sure someone showed up. Then she stood up, picked up her purse, and said she hoped I felt better soon. You should tell the front desk to update the form, she said at the door. It's been a few years. I think they just never got around to it. She left the door open. The nurse came in 2 minutes later with the pain medication and asked who that woman was. I said it was a mistake. I said my husband was on his way. He wasn't. I'd called him 3 times and he hadn't answered. But that's what I said. I spent that night alone in the hospital. I watched the numbers on the thermostat change from 68 to 67 to 66. I didn't sleep. I couldn't take my eyes off the door. I kept expecting him to walk through it. He didn't. He showed up the next morning at 10. He had a coffee in each hand and a face that said, I'm sorry, in a way that meant he wasn't. He sat in the same chair his ex-wife had sat in. He handed me one of the coffees. It was black. I take it with cream. Phone died, he said. What happened to your leg? I told him what happened. He nodded. He asked if the surgery went well. I said yes. He asked if I needed anything from the house. I said no. He sat there with his coffee and his apologetic face, and he didn't say a word about Helen. He didn't mention she'd been here. He didn't mention she'd sat in that chair and smiled at me and told me she was still his emergency contact. I didn't ask. That's the other thing I think about now. I didn't ask. I could have. I should have. Instead, I sat there with my black coffee and my elevated ankle, and I told myself it was a clerical error. I told myself Helen was just being nice. I told myself Peter would fix it as soon as he remembered. I told myself a lot of things that week. He brought me home on Saturday. He helped me up the stairs. He made me soup. He set up a little table next to the couch with my laptop and my chargers and a stack of books I'd been meaning to read. He was very attentive for about 3 days. Then he went back to work and the attentiveness dropped off and I was alone on the couch with my leg in the air and a lot of time to think. Time to think is dangerous. The email I'd been trying to read in the hospital was still open on my phone. Vendor contract. I was a senior procurement manager at a mid-sized manufacturing company. I'd worked there for 12 years. I was good at it. I was the one who caught discrepancies and negotiated terms and made sure nobody overpaid for steel or shipping. The contract I'd been reading was for a new logistics provider. I'd been reviewing it for a week. I knew it back way road. I knew the rates and the penalties and the performance clauses. I knew that something was off in the liability section, but I couldn't put my finger on it. It was the kind of thing that would come to me if I stepped away. It was the kind of thing that usually came to me in the shower or while I was cooking dinner. It came to me on the couch with my leg in the air and my husband back at work and a name I couldn't stop thinking about. Helen. His ex-wife. His emergency contact. I opened the contact in his phone. I told myself I was just looking for a number. I wasn't. I scrolled through the names. There she was. Helen. Listed under H. No last name. No label. Just Helen. Then I scrolled to mine. I was listed under Elena. Wife. With the full contact info. With the call button and the text button and all the things that meant something on paper but didn't mean a damn thing when it came to who actually showed up. There was no way he didn't know she was still listed. The hospital had called her. They'd have left a voicemail. She'd have told him. Or the hospital called him too, and he didn't answer, and they called her. Either way, he knew. He knew, and he didn't change it, and he didn't tell me. That was the first crack. I didn't confront him about it. I didn't do anything. I sat on the couch and I thought about the vendor contract, and I thought about Helen's black wool coat, and I thought about the way she'd smiled at me like I was a child who had wandered into the wrong room. 1 week later, I went back to work. I limped. I took the elevator instead of the stairs. I sat at my desk and I finished the contract review, and I found the liability discrepancy and I fixed it, and my boss told me I was a lifesaver. I was a lifesaver. That's what he said. The words hung in the air. I couldn't stop thinking about the irony. I sta root going through Peter's emails that night. It was easy. He never changed his passwords. He used the same one for everything. I'd known it for years. I'd never used it before. I always thought that was a kind of trust. Now I saw it for what it was. He didn't think I would look. He was wrong. I found the messages. They went back 8 months. Mostly logistical. Meeting times. Dates. Locations. There was a hotel downtown that he'd been charging to his credit CA road. He didn't use the one I had access to. I found the statement. I found the charges. I found the pattern. Every Thursday. For hours. Paid parking. A dinner rge at the hotel restaurant. 2 entrees. A bottle of wine. Thursday was my late night at work. I sat in my office with the door closed and I sta read at the screen, and I thought about Helen's black wool coat and the way she'd told me it had been a few years, and they just never got around to updating the form. I thought about the way she said it. She said it like she was still part of his life. Like she was still the one who showed up. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call him and ask what the hell was going on. I just sat there, and I looked at the charges and I thought about every Thursday night I'd come home tired and he'd been sitting on the couch watching TV, and he'd asked about my day, and I'd told him. I'd told him everything. He told me nothing. I went home that night and I didn't say a word. I made dinner. I asked about his day. He told me about a meeting he'd had. I nodded. I listened. I was listening the way I'd always listened, but now I was also hearing something else. I was hearing the silence underneath his words. On Saturday morning, I called my sister. I told her I was thinking about doing something stupid. She said she'd bring wine. She came over and sat on my couch, and I told her everything. I told her about the hospital. I told her about Helen. I told her about the emails and the hotel charges and the Thursday nights. She looked at me with her wine glass in her hand and she said, "So what are you going to do?" I told her I didn't know. She said I always knew. She said I was the one who could look at a contract for 15 minutes and find the one paragraph that was going to lose the company $50,000 RS. She said this was just another contract and I should read it the same way. There's a way out, she said. You just have to find the liability clause. I didn't tell her what I was thinking. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anything. I just had a feeling that I'd been sitting in the wrong chair for a long time, and I needed to stand up. That week, I saw him. The other one. The person Helen was actually meeting. I followed Peter on a Thursday. I told myself I was just making sure. I told myself I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I drove to the hotel and I sat in the parking lot and I watched him walk in. He was wearing a jacket I'd bought him for Christmas. He was holding a bag. He was looking at his phone. 2 minutes later, I saw her. She wasn't what I expected. She was younger. Maybe late 20s. She wore jeans and a white sweater, and she walked like she owned the sidewalk. She didn't look like Helen. She didn't look like me. She looked like someone who hadn't been married long enough to know what it meant. I watched her walk into the hotel. I watched the glass doors swing shut behind her. I sat in my car for another hour. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I knew what was happening in there. I didn't need to see it. I drove home and I told Peter I'd had a long day. He asked if I wanted dinner. I said I wasn't hungry. He made himself a sandwich and sat on the couch and watched a basketball game. I sat at the kitchen table and I looked at the chirridges on his credit card statement. I looked at the pattern. Every Thursday. Like clockwork. Like he'd scheduled it in a calendar. Like he'd planned it so carefully that he never once thought someone would notice. He didn't think I would look. He was wrong about a lot of things. The next Tuesday, I got a call from Helen. I didn't know the number. I answered anyway. Elena, she said. It wasn't a question. She knew who she was calling. Hello, Helen. I thought you should know, she said. Peter and I are back together. We're trying again. He's going to ask for a divorce. I thought you should hear it from me before he tells you. There was silence on the line. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I just sat there with the phone in my hand, and I thought about the fact that she thought she was doing me a favor. She thought she was the one in control. She thought she was telling me something I didn't already know. That's when I understood the information gap. She didn't know that I'd seen the chirridges. She didn't know that I'd followed him. She didn't know that I'd been sitting in that parking lot watching his jacket walk into the hotel while she was probably getting the same phone call I was getting right now. She thought she was ahead of me. She had no idea how far behind she was. Thank you for telling me, I said. That must have been her road. She didn't respond to that. I think she expected me to cry. I think she expected me to ask questions. I didn't give her any. I just thanked her again and said I had to go and hung up the phone. Then I called my sister. How fast can you get here? I said. She was there in 45 minutes. We sat in the kitchen, and I told her about the call. I told her about Helen's voice. I told her about the way she'd said, "We're trying again," like it was a project they were working on together. I told her I'd been sitting in my own marriage for 17 years thinking we were a project too, and I'd been the only one doing the work. 17 years, I said. He never changed his emergency contact from the woman he divorced 8 years ago, and he's been sleeping with someone else for 8 months, and she's been sleeping with him and not telling me that he's been sleeping with someone else, and now she's calling me to tell me they're trying again. My sister looked at me with her wine glass in her hand. That's a lot of clauses, she said. It's a breach of contract, I said. She didn't laugh. I didn't either. I was looking at the invoices on my laptop. The ones for the new vendor I'd spent 6 months vetting. The vendor I'd brought on and spent every Thursday afternoon training. The vendor who happened to be located in the same building as the hotel Peter went to every Thursday. He wasn't the only one who could plan. He wasn't the only one who could keep track. He wasn't the only one who could hide things in plain sight. I opened the invoice. I looked at the liability section. I found the discrepancy I'd noticed weeks ago. The one that didn't make sense until I had all the pieces. I read it again. I knew exactly how to use it. I didn't tell Peter I knew. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't do any of the things Helen probably expected me to do. I just route packing his bags. Not the expensive ones. Those I left in the closet. I packed his golf clothes. I packed his old jackets. I packed the things he'd had for years. The things he kept. The things he never threw away. I packed everything that had his scent on it. The things that smelled like him. The things that smelled like 17 years of marriage. Then I had them delivered to Helen's house. The next day, Peter came home and found me sitting at the kitchen table. I was drinking tea. My leg was propped up on the chair next to me. My laptop was open. On the screen was the invoice with the liability clause highlighted. His ex-wife showed up at my hospital bed as his emergency contact. I sent his bags to her doorstep. Now he was standing in the doorway looking at the empty space where his golf clubs used to be. Where are my things, he said. I took a sip of tea. Or where's Helen, I said. He didn't answer the question. He just stood there with the door still open and his hand still on the frame and his eyes moving from the empty floor to my face and back again like he was trying to do the math. Where are my things, Elena? I asked first. I don't know where Helen is. What does that have to do with anything? I took another sip of tea. It was chamomile. I hated chamomile. I'd bought it because he liked it, and I'd drunk it for 17 years because he liked it, and I was going to finish this cup because it was the last thing I was ever going to do for him. Your things are with her, I said. I had them delivered this morning. 2 boxes. 1 duffel. They should have arrived around 11. His face went through 3 stages in about 5 seconds. Confusion. Comprehension. Then something that looked like anger, but didn't quite get there. You sent my clothes to Helen's house. I sent your clothes to your new home. She called me on Tuesday. She told me you two were back together. She told me you were going to ask for a divorce. I'm just getting ahead of the paperwork. He stepped into the room. His shoes were loud on the tile. He used to tell me I walked too quietly. He said he never heard me coming. I always thought that was a compliment. Now I knew it was a warning. That's not what's happening, he said. Helen and I went back together. She's confused. She's been having a hard time. She called you because she thought it would help her get closure. Closure. I said the word like it tasted bad. She told me she was still your emergency contact. She told me she came to the hospital because you couldn't be bothered. She told me you were trying again. That's not confusion. That's a strategy. He pulled out the chair across from me. He sat down. He was wearing a gray sweater. He looked tired. He had circles under his eyes that I hadn't noticed before. I used to notice everything about him. I used to notice when he changed his shampoo. I used to notice when he was worried about work. I used to notice when he needed a haircut. I hadn't noticed the circles. I wondered when they'd shown up. You're overreacting, he said. I'm overreacting. Yes. Helen is not a threat. She's an ex-wife. She's been out of my life for 8 years. The only reason she's still on the emergency contact list is because I forgot to change it. It's a clerical error. That's all it is. I put my teacup down. I leaned 4-way road. I looked him in the eyes and I let him see that I wasn't angry. I was something else. Something I didn't have a name for yet. What about the girl in the white sweater? He didn't blink. He didn't flinch. He just sat there with his hands on the table and his circles under his eyes and his face completely neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. The girl from the hotel. The one you meet every Thursday. The one you take to dinner and buy wine for and your car for and probably call by name when you're alone in the room with her. The girl in the white sweater. The one who walked in behind you while you were holding the bag I bought you for Christmas. He was quiet for a long time. The kitchen clock was ticking. I'd never noticed how loud it was. He'd bought it at a flea market. It had a wooden frame and Roman numerals and a second hand that jerked 4-way RD every time it moved. I'd always thought it was charming. I'd always thought a lot of things were charming. Her name is Rachel, he said. She's a consultant. She works for the vendor you brought on. She handles logistics coordination. We've been meeting to discuss the contract. You meet her at a hotel. The hotel has conference rooms. You meet her at a hotel on Thursday nights. Your late nights at work. My late nights at work. You order dinner. You order wine. You bill it to your personal credit CA road. The one I don't have access to. He didn't say anything. The clock ticked. The second hand jerked 4-way road. He was STA ring at the table like he was reading something written on the wood. How did you find the credit CARD statement? He said. I didn't find it. I looked for it. You left it in your office. You left it in the drawer you thought I didn't know about. You left everything in the places you thought I wouldn't look because you thought I was too stupid to look and too trusting to CA. He looked up. His eyes were wet. I didn't feel bad about it. I didn't feel anything. I'm sorry, he said. Sorry for what? Sorry for hiding it. Sorry for the hotel. Sorry for Rachel. Sorry for not telling you. I was going to tell you. I was going to tell you this weekend. I was going to tell you everything this weekend and ask you to give me another chance. That's a lot of sorry. I mean it. I don't CA if you mean it. I don't CA what you mean. I CA about what you did. I CA about the fact that you spent 8 months lying to my face. I read about the fact that your ex-wife showed up at my hospital bed while you were in a meeting with someone else. I read about the fact that you let her sit in that chair and tell me she was your emergency contact and you never once thought to call the hospital and fix it because you were too busy with Rachel in a hotel room. He opened his mouth to speak. I held up my hand. Don't, I said. Don't say you're sorry again. Don't tell me you were going to tell me. Don't tell me you still love me. Don't tell me any of the things you're about to tell me, because I've already heard them. I've heard them in your voice when you talked to her. I've heard them in the way you changed your passwords. I've heard them in the way you stopped looking at me when you walked in the door. You don't get to say them to me now like they're supposed to fix anything. He closed his mouth. He looked at the table. He looked at his hands. He didn't look at me. I don't know what to say, he said. I don't need you to say anything. I need you to get out. He didn't move. He stayed in his chair with his hands on the table and his eyes on the wood and his breathing too slow and too controlled. I knew that breathing. I'd seen it during every argument we'd ever had. It was his argument breathing. The breathing he did when he was waiting for me to stop being emotional so he could explain why I was wrong. He'd been doing that for 17 years, waiting for me to stop being emotional, waiting for me to calm down, waiting for me to see reason. He'd never once stopped to think that maybe I was the one who was right. Elena, he said. You need to think about this. Think about what you're doing. Think about the life we've built. Think about 17 years. You're going to throw that away because I made a mistake. 8 months isn't a mistake. It's a choice. It was a mistake. It was a terrible mistake. I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted. I was trying to figure things out. I was going to end it. I was going to end it weeks ago. End it with her or end it with me. He didn't answer. He looked at the clock. The second hand jerked 4-way road. He looked at the teacup in front of me. He looked at the laptop screen with the highlighted liability clause. What's that? He said. What's what of that? He pointed at the screen. The invoice. What are you doing with that? I'm reading it. Reading it for what? For the same reason I read everything. To find the part that doesn't fit. He leaned 4-way road. He squinted at the screen. He wasn't a detail person. He'd never been a detail person. That was why he'd married me. That was what he'd said. He'd said he needed someone who could see the cracks before they became holes. He was seeing one now. He just didn't know what it was yet. You don't need to do that, he said. You don't need to go through my things. You don't need to investigate. This isn't a contract. This is a marriage. You don't audit a marriage. You do when it's breached. He stood up. He walked to the window. He stood with his back to me. The light from outside came through the glass and made his silhouette, and I watched it, and I thought about all the times I'd watched his silhouette walk out the door, and I'd waited for him to come back. Enough is enough, he said. This is ridiculous. You're talking like I committed a crime. I had an affair. People have affairs. People get divorced. People don't sit at kitchen tables and interrogate each other like they're in a deposition. You're right, I said. People get divorced. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get divorced. You're going to move out. You're going to get a lawyer. You're going to do all the things you were going to do anyway. But you're going to do them on my terms. He turned around. His face was different now. The circles were still there, but the softness was gone. He was looking at me the way he looked at people he didn't know. The way he looked at strangers. What terms? I closed the laptop. I didn't need the screen anymore. I had everything in my head. Every clause. Every deadline. Every penalty. I knew what I had. I knew what I was holding. The vendor contract, I said. The one I spent 6 months negotiating. The one I brought on. The one you've been using as cover for your little Thursday night meetings. There's a liability clause in the appendix. Section 8.4. You didn't read it because you don't read anything. That's fine. I read it. I wrote half of it. I know exactly how it works. He was still. The ticking clock was the only sound. Rachel is the logistics coordinator for that vendor, I said. Rachel is the one who handles the schedule. Rachel is the one who comes to your meetings. Rachel is the one who signs off on the delivery times. Rachel is the one who knows the contract inside and out. Where are you going with this? I'm going where I need to go. Section 8.4 states that any material deviation from the agreed service schedule triggers a penalty clause. The penalty is substantial. It would cost the company almost $2 million RS. It would cost them the contract. It would cost Rachel her job. He walked back to the table. He didn't sit. He stood over me. His hands were on the back of the chair. His knuckles were white. You're going to blackmail me. I'm not blackmailing you. I'm telling you what I know. You can do whatever you want with that information. But if you want a divorce, you can have one. If you want to move in with Helen or Rachel or whoever you're actually trying to end up with, you can do that too. But you're not going to fight me on anything. You're not going to take half my assets. You're not going to make this any harder than it needs to be. You're going to sign whatever papers I put in front of you. You're going to walk away from this marriage the same way you walked into it. Without a fight. He read at me. He was waiting for me to break. He'd been waiting for me to break for 17 years, and I'd never given him the satisfaction. Elena, he said. You can't do this. I already did it. I called the lawyer this morning. I have an appointment tomorrow. You can come or you cannot come. Either way, you're going to agree to my terms. You're using the vendor contract as leverage. That's unethical. That's against company policy. You could lose your job. I could, I said. But I won't. Because if I lose my job, I'm going to tell them exactly why I used the contract the way I used it. I'm going to tell them about the Thursday night meetings. I'm going to tell them about the vendor coordinator who was sleeping with my husband while she was supposed to be doing her job. I'm going to tell them about the liability they're exposed to because their employee was too busy having an affair to notice the delivery schedule was off by 4 hours every single week. The clock ticked. The second hand jerked. He sat down. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. And maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd been looking at someone else for 17 years. Maybe he'd been looking at the woman he thought I was instead of the woman I actually was. How long have you known long enough? Long enough to plan this. Long enough to realize I didn't need to plan it. I just needed to wait. You did all the planning for me. He didn't speak. He sat in his chair with his hands on the table and his face empty and his eyes fixed on the teacup I'd been drinking from. Where are my things? He said again. It wasn't a question anymore. It was a surrender. At Helen's house. You can go get them. Or you can buy new ones. I don't see either way. You sent them to Helen's house. I sent them to your new home. She called me and told me you were moving in with her. I just got ahead of the timeline. He closed his eyes. He stayed like that for a long time. I watched him breathe. I watched his shoulders drop. I watched the fight drain out of him. I'm sorry, he said. You already said that. I know. I'm saying it again. It doesn't mean anything. I know. I'm saying it anyway. I stood up. My ankle hurt. I'd been sitting too long. I was going to need my crutches. I was going to need to take the pain medication. I was going to need to do a lot of things I wasn't going to get help with anymore. You should leave. I said. Where am I going to go? That's not my problem. He stood up. He walked to the door. He paused. He didn't turn around. I'm sorry, he said a third time. I didn't answer. He walked out. The door closed behind him. The house was quiet. The clock was still ticking. The second hand was still jerking 4-way RD. I sat back down. I opened the laptop. I looked at the liability clause. I read it again. Then I root making a list. 1. The lawyer. 2. The asset division. 3. The papers. 4. The hotel. 5. The girl in the white sweater. 6. His ex-wife showed up at my hospital bed as his emergency contact. I sent his bags to her doorstep. I looked at that last line. I'd written it on a sticky note. I'd stuck it to the edge of my laptop. I'd done it the night before. I'd done it so I wouldn't forget what happened. So I wouldn't let myself feel sorry for him. I didn't feel sorry for him. I didn't feel anything. The front door opened again. I heard his footsteps. I heard him stop in the hallway. I heard him walk back to the kitchen. You have 1 hour, I said. Come back before that and I'll call the police. He didn't say anything. He walked back to the door. The front door opened. The front door closed. I listened to his CARSTART. I listened to the engine fade. I was alone. I looked at the clock. The second hand jerked 4-way road. I had a lot of work to do. The lawyer's office was on the 10th floor of a building downtown. I'd never been there before. I'd never needed a lawyer before. I'd never needed anything before because I'd always had Peter and Peter had always handled things and I'd always believed that was the way it should be. The receptionist asked if I wanted coffee. I said I wanted water. She brought me a glass and I sat in the waiting room and I looked at the art on the walls. It was all abstract. Shapes that didn't mean anything. Colors that didn't go together. I read at one of them for 5 minutes, and I didn't know what it was supposed to be, and I thought about how that was exactly how I felt about my marriage. The lawyer's name was Marga Red. She was in her 50s. She had gray hair cut short and glasses on a chain, and she shook my hand like she'd been doing it for 40 years. Elena, she said. Sit down. Tell me what happened. I told her. I told her everything. I told her about the hospital and the emergency contact and the hotel and the vendor contract and the liability clause. I told her about the girl in the white sweater and the Thursday nights and the credit card statement and the boxes I'd sent to Helen's house. She listened. She didn't interrupt. She wrote things down on a yellow legal pad. She asked questions when I stopped. Does Peter know about the vendor contract? Yes. Does he know about the liability clause? I showed it to him. What did he say? He didn't say anything. He just left. Left where? I don't know. I told him not to come back. Marga Ret put her pen down. She leaned back in her chair. She looked at me the way I looked at contracts. Like she was searching for the fine print. Elena, she said. You need to understand something. This is going to be a process. It's not going to happen overnight. You have 17 years of assets to divide. There's a house. There's retirement accounts. There's a business he's been running on the side. I've looked at the preliminary numbers. It's going to take time. I don't want the house. I don't want the retirement accounts. I don't want anything he's attached to. You're entitled to half. I don't want half. I want a clean break. I want him gone. I want him to sign the papers and I want to move on. I don't want to fight him. I don't want to spend 2 years in court. I want to be done. She looked at me again. This time it was different. She was looking at me the way my sister looked at me. Like she was trying to figure out if I really meant what I was saying. You want to walk away from the house. I want to walk away from everything he ever touched. He can have the house. He can have the money. He can have the retirement accounts. He can have the business. He can have Helen. He can have Rachel. He can have all of it. I don't want any of it. Marga Ret wrote something on her pad. She wrote it slowly. She underlined it. What do you want? I want him to know I left. I want him to know I chose to leave. I want him to know that I'm not leaving because he had an affair. I'm leaving because he made me believe I was invisible. I'm leaving because his ex-wife showed up at my hospital bed and I had to pretend it didn't matter. I'm leaving because I spent 17 years making his life easier and he spent 8 months making mine harder. She nodded. She wrote more. She looked up. Let me ask you something. If he comes back and says he wants to work it out, if he says he's sorry, if he says he'll change, what do you do? Nothing. He's already had his chance. He had 17 years of chances. He had 8 months of chances to tell me the truth. He didn't take any of them. He doesn't get another one. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She smiled. It was a small smile. It was the kind of smile you gave someone who had just passed a test. Good, she said. I like clients who know what they want. It makes my job easier. She opened a drawer. She pulled out a stack of papers. She put them on the desk in front of me. This is a divorce agreement. It's a template. It's not specific to your situation. You need to fill it out. You need to add your terms. You need to decide what you're taking and what you're leaving. You need to decide what happens to the house and the CARS and the accounts. You need to decide everything. I looked at the stack. It was thick. There were at least 40 pages. I'd read longer contracts. I'd read contracts with more fine print. I'd read contracts that took me 3 days to get through. This was just another contract. This was just another document. This was just another thing I had to analyze and break down and understand before I signed. Can I take this home? Of course. Take as long as you need. But I'd recommend making a list of what you want first. Separate the emotional from the practical. The emotional stuff doesn't matter in court. The practical stuff does. I nodded. I put the papers in my bag. I stood up. I shook her hand. One more thing, she said. He's going to contest this. He's going to fight you. He's not going to roll over and sign everything you put in front of him. You need to be ready for that. I'm ready. Are you sure? I'm sure. I walked out of the office. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. I stood there with my bag and my papers and my ankle that was still hurting, and I thought about what Marga Rett had said. He was going to fight me. He was going to fight me because he was a fighter. He fought for everything. He fought for his career. He fought for his business. He fought for the things he wanted. He'd never fought for me. I'd always been the easy party. I'd always been the party that came without a fight. That was the party that hurt the most. I went home. I sat at the kitchen table. I opened the stack of papers. I root reading. I read for 2 hours. I read about asset division and spousal support and property allocation and legal fees and child custody. We didn't have children. I'd never wanted them. He'd said he didn't want them either. We'd agreed. We'd agreed on everything. We'd never fought about anything. That should have been a warning sign. I put the papers down. I opened my laptop. I opened the file with the vendor contract. I read the liability clause again. I read it 3 times. Section 8.4. Material deviation from the agreed service schedule. Any deviation exceeding 2 hours triggers an automatic penalty of $50,000 arrest per occurrence. Any deviation exceeding 4 hours triggers a penalty of $250,000 arrest per occurrence. Any deviation exceeding 6 hours constitutes a material breach and voids the contract. He'd been meeting Rachel every Thursday for 8 months. 8 months. That's 32 Thursdays. 32 Thursdays of meetings that lasted 4 hours. 32 Thursdays of material deviation. 32 Thursdays of penalties that should have been assessed but never were. $250,000 arrest per occurrence. Times $32.8 million arrest. $8 million arrests and penalties that the company had never collected because the person responsible for monitoring the schedule was the same person who was sleeping with my husband. I looked at the number on my screen. 8 million. I looked at the number and I thought about Peter's face, and I thought about Rachel's white sweater, and I thought about Helen's black wool coat. I looked at the number again. I closed the laptop. I didn't need the number. I didn't need the contract. I didn't need the leverage. I just needed him to know that I knew. The doorbell rang. I limped to the door. I opened it. It was Helen. She was wearing a different coat. This one was brown. It was still expensive. She had her hands in her pockets and her hair was pulled back and she looked like she'd been crying. Can I come in? She said. Does Peter know you're here? He doesn't know I'm here. He doesn't know I'm talking to you. He's at my house. He's been at my house since yesterday. He won't stop talking about you. He won't stop talking about the contract. He won't stop talking about the liability clause. I stepped aside. She walked in. She walked to the kitchen. She stood in front of the table with the stack of divorce papers and the closed laptop and the teacup I hadn't put away. I'm sorry, she said. I'm sorry I called you. I'm sorry I told you we were back together. I was lying. I was lying because I thought it would make him come back to me. I thought if I told you we were together, you'd leave him and he'd have no choice but to come back to me. He came back to you anyway. He came back to me because you kicked him out. He came back to me because you sent his clothes to my house. He came back to me because he didn't have anywhere else to go. He doesn't want to be with me. He wants to be with you. I sat down. I put the teacup aside. I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit down, I said. She sat. She looked at her hands. She looked at the papers. She looked at me. I know you hate me, she said. I know you have every reason to hate me. I showed up at your hospital bed and I pretended to be nice, and I told you I was still his emergency contact, and I did it on purpose. I did it because I wanted you to know that I was still in his life. I wanted you to know that I mattered. You didn't matter. You were just a clerical error. I know. I know that now. I know he never wanted me back. I know he was never going to come back to me. I know he was just using me because I was there and you were sick and he didn't know what to do with himself. He wasn't using you. He was using Rachel. You were just a backup. She flinched. It was a small flinch. It was the kind of flinch you couldn't fake. I know about her, she said. I know about the hotel. I know about the Thursday nights. I know about the consultant. I know about all of it. I found out the same way you did. I looked at his credit card statements. I looked at his phone. I looked at everything. Then why did you call me? Why did you tell me you two were back together? Because I wanted to believe it. Because I wanted to believe that after all these years, he finally chose me. But he didn't choose me. He never chose me. He chose you. He always chose you. And I couldn't stand that. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. I looked at the woman who'd sat in that hospital chair and smiled at me and told me she was still his emergency contact. I looked at her and I didn't see the threat anymore. I just saw someone who was just as lost as I'd been a week ago. What do you want? I said. I want to know what happens next. I want to know what you're going to do with the contract. I want to know if you're going to ruin him. I want to know if I should be SCA red. I leaned back. I looked at her. I thought about everything she'd done. I thought about the way she'd smiled at me. I thought about the way she'd told me he never changed the form. I thought about the way she'd looked at me like I was the intruder. You don't have to be SCA red, I said. I'm not going to ruin him. I'm not going to use the contract. I'm not going to do any of the things you think I'm going to do. She STA red at me. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her face. Why not? Because I don't want to be the kind of person who does that. I don't want to be the kind of person who uses a contract to destroy someone. I don't want to be the kind of person who fights dirty. I want to be the kind of person who walks away clean. She looked at me like I was speaking another language. You're just going to let him go. I'm going to let him go. I'm going to sign the papers. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to find a new place to live and a new way to live, and I'm never going to think about him again. That's what I'm going to do. She was quiet. She looked at the papers. She looked at the kitchen. She looked at the clock on the wall. He still loves you, she said. I don't see a re. He's been talking about you nonstop. He keeps saying he made a mistake. He keeps saying he wants to fix it. He keeps saying he'll do anything to get you back. Then he should have done something before I found out. He should have changed his emergency contact. He should have told me about Rachel. He should have come to the hospital when I called. He should have done 100 different things, and he did none of them. It's too late. It's never too late. It is. It's too late. I've already moved on. I've already decided. I've already made my peace with it. He can say whatever he wants. It doesn't change anything. She nodded. She stood up. She walked to the door. She paused. I'm sorry, she said. You said that already. I know. I'm saying it again. I'm sorry I showed up at the hospital. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry I tried to hurt you. You didn't deserve any of it. Thank you. She walked out. The door closed behind her. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked at the stack of papers. I looked at the clock. The second hand jerked four-way road. I picked up my phone. I called my sister. She was here, I said. She came to apologize. Who? Helen. Peter's ex-wife. She came to apologize. She said he's at her house. She said he won't stop talking about me. She said he wants to fix it. What did you say? I told her it was too late. Was it? I didn't answer. I looked at the papers. I looked at the clock. I looked at the door Helen had just walked out of. I'm going to need you to come over, I said. I'm going to need you to help me with something. What kind of something? The kind that involves a moving truck. My sister showed up with a truck and a bottle of wine. The wine went in the kitchen. The truck went in the driveway. She stood in the middle of the living room with her hands on her hips and looked around like she was surveying a battlefield. Where do we start? She said. Everything. I want everything that's mine. I want everything I brought into this house. I want everything I paid for. I want everything that doesn't have his name on it. That's a lot of everything. I know. She walked to the bookshelf. She pulled out a stack of novels. They were mine. I'd read them all. He'd never read a single one. He told me he didn't have time for fiction. He told me he needed to focus on things that were real. I looked at the books in her hands, and I thought about how I'd spent years choosing them. I'd spent years picking out the ones I wanted. I'd spent years stacking them on the shelf. I'd spent years pretending it didn't bother me that he never read them. These are yours, she said. What about the rest? The rest can stay. I don't want the furniture. I don't want the ART. I don't want the things we bought together. I just want the things that are mine. You sure? I'm sure. She sta route packing. She moved through the house like she'd done it before. She knew where everything was. She knew what I'd brought and what he'd brought and what we'd bought together. She knew because she'd helped me move in 17 years ago. I went to the bedroom. I opened the closet. I looked at the rows of clothes. His were on the left. Mine were on the right. I'd organized it that way. I'd organized it because he'd asked me to. I'd organized it because I wanted to make his life easier. I pulled down my clothes. I packed them in boxes. I packed the dresses I never wore. I packed the jackets I'd bought for interviews. I packed the shoes I'd kept because they were comfortable. I packed everything that didn't remind me of him. The wedding dress was in the back. I'd kept it in a garment bag. I'd kept it because I thought I'd pass it down someday. I'd kept it because I thought I'd have a daughter. I'd kept it because I thought it meant something. I pulled it out. I looked at it. It was still white. It was still beautiful. It was still the dress I'd worn on the day I'd promised to love him forever. I put it in the trash bag. Elena, my sister said. She was standing in the doorway. She was looking at the dress. Are you sure about that? I'm sure. Don't you want to donate it? Don't you want to give it to someone who could use it? I don't see a who uses it. I just don't want to see it again. She didn't argue. She walked over and took the bag. She right it out of the room. I heard her put it in the truck. I went through the rest of the closet. I found his things. I found the sweaters he never wore. I found the ties I'd bought him for Christmas. I found the jacket he'd been wearing the night he proposed. I found the jacket he'd been wearing the night he met Rachel. I left them all in the closet. I walked out. I didn't look back. The living room was half empty now. My sister had taken down the curtains. She'd taken the lamps. She'd taken the rug. She'd taken the clock off the wall. The clock, I said. Where did you put the clock? On the truck. It's yours. You bought it at the flea market. He didn't even like it. I looked at the wall where the clock used to hang. There was a dark rectangle where the wood had been. The paint underneath was a different color. I'd been looking at that clock for 15 years, and I'd never noticed the paint was different. How much stuff do you think is mine? I said. More than you think. Less than you want. What does that mean? It means you've been living in his house for 17 years. It means you've been letting him make the decisions about what stays and what goes. It means you don't even know what's yours anymore. She was right. She was always right. She'd been right about him from the beginning. She'd told me he was too smooth. She'd told me he was too charming. She'd told me he was the kind of man who would leave as soon as things got hard. I'd told her she was wrong. I'd told her she didn't know him. I'd told her he was different. He wasn't different. He was exactly the same. He was exactly the same, and I was the one who'd been wrong. We need to talk about the divorce papers, I said. I need to decide what I'm taking and what I'm leaving. I need to decide everything. Already. I want to be out of this house by the end of the week. I want to be done with him by the end of the month. I want to be free. She stopped packing. She walked over to me. She put her hands on my shoulders. You're not free yet, she said. You're still in his house. You're still thinking about him. You're still looking at the wall where the clock used to be. You're still angry. That's not free. That's just another cage. I didn't say anything. I looked at the dark rectangle on the wall. I looked at the boxes on the floor. I looked at the truck in the driveway. Then what do? I said. You finish packing. You sign the papers. You move out. You start over. And then you stop thinking about him. That's the rightest part. That's the part nobody tells you about. She went back to packing. I went back to the kitchen. I sat at the table with the stack of papers and the laptop and the teacup. I opened the divorce agreement. I read it again. I read it with a pen in my hand. I wrote my name at the top. I wrote the date. I route filling out the sections. Section 1, Property Division. I left the house to him. I left the furniture. I left the ART. I left the things we bought together. I took my books. I took my clothes. I took the things I'd brought with me. Section 2, Financial Accounts. I took my retirement account. I took my savings. I took my checking. I left his accounts alone. I didn't want his money. Section 3, Spousal Support. None. I didn't want his support. I didn't want anything that tied me to him. Section 4, Legal Fees. I'd pay my own. He'd pay his own. I didn't want him to owe me anything. I signed the papers. I put them in an envelope. I wrote his name on the front. Done. I said. My sister came in. She looked at the envelope. She looked at me. Are you sure you don't want to have a lawyer review that? I already did. I met with her yesterday. She gave me the template. She told me to fill it out. She told me to decide what I wanted and what I didn't want. This is what I decided. Can I see it? I handed her the envelope. She opened it. She read it. She read it slowly. She read every line. Elena, she said. This is generous. This is too generous. You're leaving him everything. I'm leaving him what I don't want. You don't want the house. I don't want the house. You don't want the money. I don't want the money. You don't want anything that would make him pay for what he did. I want him to know that I walked away from everything. I want him to know that I could have taken it all and I didn't. I want him to know that he's not worth a fight. He's not worth a fight, and he's not worth a house, and he's not worth a single thing I could have taken. She looked at me. She looked at the envelope. She looked at the wall where the clock used to be. Okay, she said. Let's finish packing. We packed for 4 hours. We packed everything I owned. We filled the truck. We filled the back of her car. We filled the space between the seats. I walked through the empty rooms. I walked through the living room with no curtains. I walked through the bedroom with no clothes. I walked through the kitchen with no clock. I stood in the middle of the room, and I looked at the wall, and I listened to the silence. The door opened. I turned around. Peter was standing in the doorway. He was wearing the gray sweater. He had the circles under his eyes. He was holding an envelope. What are you doing? He said. Moving. He looked at the empty rooms. He looked at the truck in the driveway. He looked at my sister standing in the kitchen with a box in her hands. You're moving out. Yes. You're moving out without talking to me. There's nothing to talk about. The papers are on the table. I signed them. You need to sign them too. He walked to the table. He picked up the envelope. He opened it. He read it. He read it the same way my sister had read it. Slowly. Refully. Elena, he said. You're leaving me the house. Yes. The retirement accounts. Yes. The business. Yes. He looked up. His face was a mask. I'd seen that mask 100 times. I'd seen it when he was hiding something. I'd seen it when he was lying. Why? Because I don't want them. I don't want anything you touched. I don't want anything you bought. I don't want anything you paid for. I want to walk away and never think about you again. You can't do that. You can't just walk away from everything. You're entitled to half. You're entitled to more than half. I cheated on you. I lied to you. I did things you don't even know about. I know about everything. You don't know about everything. What else is there? He looked at his hands. He looked at the envelope. He looked at the floor. I borrowed money against the house. I borrowed money against your retirement account. I borrowed money from the business. I was going to pay it back. I was going to pay it all back. I was going to fix everything. I stood there. I looked at him. I didn't feel anything. How much? $200,000 RS. 200,000, 150,000 from the house. 30,000 from your retirement. 20,000 from the business. I was going to pay it back. I had a plan. I was going to fix everything. Fix what? Fix my life. Fix my marriage. Fix everything I'd ruined. I had a plan. I was going to pay off the debt and come clean and ask you to forgive me. I had it all planned out. The kitchen was quiet. My sister was standing in the corner. She was holding a box. She was looking at me. I walked to the table. I sat down. I looked at him. I looked at the man I'd married. I looked at the man who'd borrowed money against my retirement. I looked at the man who'd lied to me for 8 months. I looked at the man who'd let his ex-wife show up at my hospital bed and pretended it was nothing. Peter, I said. You need to tell me everything. You need to tell me all of it. You need to tell me what you've done and who you've done it with and what you've taken and what you've lost. He sat down across from me. He put the envelope on the table. He folded his hands. Rachel, he said. She knew the contract. She knew the penalties. She knew the deviations. She told me we could use the contract to make money. She told me she could manipulate the schedule. She told me she could hide the penalties. She told me we could split the money. I read at him. I read at the man I'd married. I read at the man who'd been sleeping with a woman who was using the contract I'd negotiated to steal money from my company. How much did you make? 200,000. I put it into the business. I was going to use it to pay off the debts. I was going to use it to fix everything. I was going to use it to make things right. You stole $200,000 RS from my company. I took a percentage. I took a percentage of what was already being taken. I wasn't the one who created the scheme. She created the scheme. She was the one who manipulated the schedule. She was the one who hid the deviations. She was the one who told me it was easy. I just followed her lead. You followed her lead. You followed her lead into my company. You followed her lead into my retirement account. You followed her lead into a hotel room every Thursday night. It's not what you think. Then what is it? He was silent. He looked at the table. He looked at his hands. He looked at the envelope. I don't know how to explain it, he said. Then don't. Don't explain it. Don't say anything else. I don't want to hear it. I took the envelope. I took the papers. I took my pen. I crossed out my name. I crossed out the terms I'd written. I crossed out everything I'd given him. I root over. Section 1. Property division. The house is sold. The proceeds split 50-50. The furniture is sold. The ART is sold. Everything we bought together is sold. Section 2. Financial accounts. All assets refrozen pending investigation. Section 3. Spousal support. None. I didn't want his money. Section 4. Legal fees. He pays his own. I pay my own. Section 5. He agrees to carry fully with any investigation related to the vendor contract. I put the pen down. I looked at him. You're going to sign this, I said. You're going to sign this, and you're going to carry it with the investigation, and you're going to tell them everything you know about Rachel and the scheme and the money. You're going to report me. I'm going to report the contract violation. I'm going to tell the company what happened. I'm going to tell them about the deviations and the penalties and the money. What happens to you after that is not my problem. He read at the paper. He read at the new terms. He read at the section about the investigation. You're going to ruin me, he said. You ruined yourself. I'm just reading the contract. He didn't sign. He just sat there. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. Who are you? He said. I'm the woman you married. I'm the woman you lied to. I'm the woman you cheated on. I'm the woman you borrowed money from without asking. I'm the woman who's finally reading the fine print. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just read at me. The clock was gone. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Sign the papers, I said. Sign the papers and walk away. Walk away and don't look back. Walk away and don't ever try to contact me again. I can't. You can't sign the papers. I can't walk away. You have to. I can't. I'm still in love with you. I looked at him. I looked at the man who'd borrowed money against my retirement. I looked at the man who'd slept with a woman who stole from my company. I looked at the man who'd let his ex-wife show up at my hospital bed. Peter, I said. You're in love with a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. You're in love with the woman who used to wait for you. You're in love with the woman who used to make dinner and clean the house and read contracts for your business. You're in love with the woman who never asked questions. That woman is dead. She died in that hospital room when your ex-wife walked through the door. He didn't say anything. He looked at the table. He looked at the papers. She's not dead, he said. She's sitting right here. She's sitting right here. But she's not the same woman. She's never going to be the same woman. And she's never going to love you again. I put the papers in front of him. I put the pen on top of them. Sign the papers, I said. He picked up the pen. He looked at the page. He looked at the words. He signed. He signed the papers and then he left. He walked out the door, and I watched him go, and I didn't feel anything. That was the strange part. I'd spent 17 years feeling everything. I'd spent 17 years worrying about his moods and his silences, and the way he looked at me when I said something he didn't like. And now he was gone, and I felt nothing. My sister drove me to my new apartment. It was a one-bedroom on the other side of the city. I'd found it online. I'd signed the lease without even seeing it in person. It was small. It was cheap. It was mine. We ca ride the boxes up the stairs. We stacked them in the living room. We sat on the floor and ordered pizza and ate it out of the box and drank wine from the bottle. What happens now, my sister said. Now I report the contract violation. Now I tell the company what happened. Now I let the legal department handle it. You're going to turn him in, I'm going to turn Rachel in. He was just a participant. She was the one who designed the scheme. She was the one who manipulated the schedule. She was the one who hid the deviations. She was the one who stole $8 million RS from my company. 8 million, 8 million. He only took 200,000. She took the rest. She took it and she hid it and she spent it. I don't know where it went. I don't see where it went. I just know the company deserves to know. She looked at me. She had pizza in her hand and wine on her breath, and she looked at me like I was a stranger. You're not the same person, she said. I know. You're different. I know. You okay? I thought about that question for a long time. I thought about the hospital and the emergency contact and the hotel and the contract and the liability clause and the papers and the boxes and the empty rooms. I don't know if I'm okay, I said. But I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be okay because I'm not going to spend any more time thinking about him. I'm not going to spend any more time wondering what I did wrong. I'm not going to spend any more time trying to fix something that can't be fixed. She nodded. She finished her pizza. She finished her wine. She looked at the boxes stacked against the wall. Let's unpack, she said. We unpacked all night. We put the books on the shelf. We hung the clothes in the closet. We put the dishes in the kitchen. I found a new place for everything. I found a new place for everything I owned. The next morning, I went to work. I walked into the office. I walked to my desk. I sat down at my computer. I opened the contract. I read it again. I read the liability clause. I read the schedule. I read the deviations. I wrote the report. I wrote it carefully. I wrote it factually. I wrote it like a contract. I listed every deviation. I listed every date. I listed every penalty. I listed every amount. I sent the report to the legal department. I sent the report to my boss. I sent the report to HR. Then I waited. The knock came 3 hours later. My boss opened the door. He had a face I'd never seen before. It wasn't angry. It wasn't confused. It was something else. It was the face of someone who had just been told their entire operation was rotten. Elena, he said. Can I speak with you? I followed him to his office. I closed the door. I sat down. He sat across from me. Tell me what you know, he said. I told him everything. I told him about the contract and the liability clause and the deviations and the penalties. I told him about Rachel and the Thursday nights and the hotel and the money. I told him about Peter and the credit card statements and the retirement account and the debt. He listened. He wrote notes. He asked questions. How do you know all of this? Because I'm the one who drafted the contract. I'm the one who wrote the liability clause. I'm the one who reviewed every delivery schedule for 6 months. I'm the one who noticed the discrepancy and didn't know what it meant until I found out about the affair. The affair. My husband. Peter. He was having an affair with Rachel. She was the logistics coordinator. She was the one who manipulated the schedule. She was the one who hid the deviations. She was the one who took the money. He was quiet for a long time. He looked at his notes. He looked at me. Elena, he said. Do you understand the implications of what you're telling me? I understand. Rachel is going to lose her job. Your husband is going to be implicated. There's going to be an investigation. There's going to be a trial. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be very difficult for you. I understand. You're okay with that. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with all of it. He nodded. He leaned back in his chair. He folded his hands. Okay, he said. Thank you for coming Four-Way Road. I'm going to need to ask you to keep this confidential. I'm going to need to ask you not to talk to anyone about this. I'm going to need to ask you to cooperate fully with the investigation. I will. One more thing. Yes, there's going to be a lot of pressure on you. People are going to ask questions. People are going to want to know why you waited so long to report this. People are going to want to know why you didn't say something earlier. Because I didn't know earlier. I didn't know about the affair. I didn't know about the deviations. I didn't know about the money. I found out. I reported it. That's all I can do. He nodded. He stood up. He shook my hand. Thank you, he said. You did the right thing. I walked out of his office. I walked back to my desk. I sat down in my chair. I opened my email. I saw a message from Peter. Subject line, we need to talk. I didn't open it. I deleted it. I deleted it and I didn't think about it again. The investigation sta route the next day. Rachel was placed on administrative leave. The contract was frozen. The schedule was reviewed. The penalties were assessed. The money was traced. I didn't see any of it. I just heard about it. I heard about it in meetings. I heard about it in emails. I heard about it in the whispers that followed me through the hallway. People looked at me differently. I could feel their eyes on my back. I could hear the questions they didn't ask. I could feel the suspicion in the air. I didn't see I didn't see what they thought. I didn't see what they said. I didn't see about any of it. I just kept working. I reviewed contracts. I found discrepancies. I negotiated terms. I did my job. I did it well. One afternoon, I got a call from the legal department. It was a lawyer I didn't know. She asked if I could come to the conference room. I said I was on my way. The conference room was on the 8th floor. It had windows that looked out over the city. It had a long table and chairs and a whiteboard and a screen. The lawyer was waiting. There was another woman sitting next to her. The other woman was wearing a suit. She had a file in front of her. She looked up when I walked in. Elena, the lawyer said. Sit down. This is Rebecca. She's the investigator. I sat down. I looked at Rebecca. She had sharp eyes. She had a sharp voice. We've been looking into the contract, Rebecca said. We've found the deviations. We've found the penalties. We've found the money. But there's something we haven't found. What's the source of the money? Rachel told us she was taking it and hiding it and spending it. But we can't find any trace of where the money went. It just disappeared. It's like it never existed. I looked at her. I looked at the file. I looked at the screen. She was using a separate account, I said. An account under a different name. A name that wasn't hers. How do you know that? Because I'm the one who drafts the contracts. I'm the one who reviews the financial records. I'm the one who noticed the discrepancy. I'm the one who did all the work while everyone else was looking the other way. Rebecca sta read at me. She didn't smile. She didn't say anything. Can you prove that? She said. I can show you how to find it. I can show you where to look. I can show you the trail. But I can't prove it for you. You have to do that yourself. She wrote something in her file. She looked at me again. Elena, she said. We need to ask you a question. You're going to need to answer it truthfully. Okay. Did you know about the deviations before you reported them? I knew about the discrepancy. I didn't know about the deviations. I didn't know about the schedule manipulation. I didn't know about the penalties. I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was. I found out. I reported it. That's all I can tell you. She wrote more. She looked at the lawyer. The lawyer nodded. Thank you, Rebecca said. We're going to look into it. We're going to find the money. We're going to make sure whoever took it pays for it. I stood up. I walked to the door. I paused. One more thing, I said. Rachel wasn't working alone. She had help. She had someone on the inside. Someone who knew the system. Someone who knew how to hide the money. Rebecca looked up. Who? Peter. My husband. He knew about the scheme. He participated in it. He took $200,000 Rs and he put it into his business. I reported that. I reported it in the divorce papers. I reported it to you. I reported it to everyone. She wrote more. She looked at the file. She looked at the lawyer. Thank you, she said. We'll look into it. I walked out. I walked back to my desk. I sat down. I opened my email. I saw another message from Peter. Subject line, please. Another one. Subject line, I'm sorry. Another one. Subject line, can we talk? Another one. Subject line, just once. I deleted all of them. The next week, I got a letter. It was from the court. It said I was required to testify. It said I was required to appear in front of a judge. It said I was required to tell the truth about everything I knew. I looked at the letter. I looked at the date. I looked at the time. I put it on the fridge. I left it there. I went to work. The day of the testimony, I put on a suit. I didn't have many suits. I'd never needed them. But I had one. I'd bought it for a conference 10 years ago. I put it on. I looked in the mirror. I didn't recognize myself. I drove to the courthouse. I went through security. I walked into the courtroom. I sat down in the witness chair. The lawyer asked me questions. I answered them. I told the truth. I told the truth about everything. The judge asked me questions. I answered them. I told the truth about everything. The defense lawyer asked me questions. I answered them. I told the truth about everything. When I was done, the judge thanked me. He said I could step down. I stepped down. I walked out of the courtroom. I didn't look at Peter. I didn't look at Rachel. I didn't look at Helen. I just walked out. My sister was waiting for me in the hallway. She put her arm around me. How did it go? She said. Fine. Did you look at him? No. Did he look at you? I don't know. I didn't look. She walked me to the car. She drove me home. She walked me to the door. She asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. I went inside. I closed the door. I walked to the kitchen. I opened the fridge. I thought about the testimony. I thought about the questions. I thought about the answers. I thought about Peter's face. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to remember it. I poured a glass of water. I looked at the letter on the fridge. I took it down. I read it again. It was over. It was finally over. I sat on the couch. I looked at the empty room. I looked at the boxes I hadn't unpacked. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything at all. My phone buzzed. It was Peter. Again. I didn't answer. I didn't delete it. I just let it ring. I let it ring until it stopped. 2 weeks after the testimony, I got a letter from the company. It was from HR. It said they'd completed their investigation. It said Rachel had been terminated. It said Peter had been banned from all company properties. It said they were pursuing legal action to recover the stolen funds. I read the letter twice. I put it down. I went to work. The office was different now. People talked to me differently. They said things like, "You're so brave," and "I don't know how you did it," and "I could never do what you did." They said it like I'd done something heroic. I hadn't done anything heroic. I'd just told the truth. The truth didn't feel heroic. It just felt like the truth. I went back to my desk. I reviewed contracts. I found discrepancies. I negotiated terms. I did my job. I did it well. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. It was Helen. "I'm calling to tell you something," she said. "What if he's not doing well? He's lost the house. He's lost the business. He's lost everything. He's living in a motel. He's been drinking. He's been calling me every night. He's been asking about you. Why are you telling me this? Because I thought you should know. Because I thought you might see a re. Because I thought you might want to do something about it. I don't want to do anything about it. I don't see a re what happens to him." "You don't mean that." "I mean it. I mean every word of it. I don't see a re what happens to him. I don't see a re if he's living in a motel. I don't see a re if he's drinking. I don't see a re if he's calling you every night. I don't see a re about any of it." There was silence on the line. Then Helen spoke. Her voice was different. It was softer. "I understand," she said. "I understand why you feel that way. I understand why you don't want to hear about him. I'm sorry I called. I won't call again." She hung up. I put the phone down. I went back to work. That night, I went home. I walked into my apartment. I looked at the boxes I still hadn't unpacked. I looked at the books on the shelf. I looked at the empty walls. I sat on the couch. I thought about what Helen had said. I thought about Peter living in a motel. I thought about him drinking. I thought about him calling her every night. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel relieved. I just sat there. The next day, I went to work. I sat at my desk. I opened my email. There was a message from Peter. Subject line, "I need to see you." I deleted it. Another message. Subject line, "Please just once." I deleted it. Another message. Subject line, "I'm sorry." I deleted it. Another message. Subject line, "I know you're reading these." I didn't answer. Another message. Subject line, I'm going to be at your APA retiment tonight. I need to see you. I need to talk to you. I need to tell you something. I looked at the message. I looked at the screen. I looked at the time. I wrote back. 2 words. Leave me alone. I didn't hear from him for 3 days. I went to work. I came home. I sat on the couch. I unpacked the boxes I'd been avoiding. I hung pictures on the walls. I made the APA retiment mine. On the 4th night, he showed up. He heard the doorbell. I looked through the peephole. It was him. He was thinner. His face was pale. His eyes were hollow. He was wearing a jacket I'd never seen before. It was too big for him. It looked like it belonged to someone else. Please, he said through the door. Please let me in. Please let me talk to you. Please let me explain. I opened the door. I stood in the doorway. I didn't invite him in. What are you doing here? I said. I need to see you. I need to talk to you. I need to tell you something. You need to leave. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes and I'll go. I'll go and I'll never bother you again. I looked at him. I looked at the man I'd married. I looked at the man who'd lied to me and cheated on me and stolen from me. I looked at the man who'd let his ex-wife show up at my hospital bed and pretended it was nothing. I stepped aside. He walked in. The APA retiment was small. He stood in the middle of the living room. He looked at the pictures on the walls. He looked at the books on the shelf. He looked at the kitchen with the dishes I'd bought. Nice place, he said. It's mine. I know. I know it's yours. I'm not going to take it from you. I'm not going to take anything from you. I just wanted to see you. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You've already said that. I know. I'm saying it again. I'm saying it because I mean it. I'm saying it because I need you to hear it. I'm saying it because I need you to know that I know what I did was wrong. I sat down on the couch. I didn't invite him to sit. He sat anyway. He sat on the other end of the couch. He kept his hands in his lap. I'm going to tell you the truth, he said. I'm going to tell you the truth about everything. I'm going to tell you the truth about the hospital. I'm going to tell you the truth about the contract. I'm going to tell you the truth about Rachel. I'm going to tell you the truth about Helen. I'm going to tell you the truth about everything. The truth, the whole truth. Nothing but the truth. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. The hospital, he said. Helen showed up because I didn't change the form. I didn't change the form because I was too busy with Rachel. I was too busy with Rachel to think about you. I was too busy with Rachel to see about what happened to you. I was too busy with Rachel to do anything except what I was doing with her. That's not a truth. That's an excuse. It's the truth. It's the ugly truth. I didn't change the form because I didn't want to change the form. I didn't want to change the form because I didn't want to lose her. I didn't want to lose her because I was in love with her. I was in love with her and I didn't see about you. I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. The contract, he said. Rachel manipulated the schedule. Rachel hid the deviations. Rachel took the money. I knew about it. I knew about it from the beginning. I helped her. I helped her because I was in love with her. I helped her because I wanted to impress her. I helped her because I wanted her to think I was on her side. I looked at him. I didn't feel anything. I just looked at him. She took $8 million RS, I said. You helped her take $8 million RS from my company. I know. She's going to jail. I know. You're going to lose everything. I know. He looked at his hands. He looked at the floor. He looked at the wall. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry for everything. I'm sorry for the hospital. I'm sorry for the contract. I'm sorry for Rachel. I'm sorry for Helen. I'm sorry for all of it. You keep saying that. Because I mean it. Then what do you want? What do you want me to do with all this? Sorry. He looked up. His eyes were red. His face was gaunt. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. I want you to forgive me, he said. I want you to forgive me and I want you to take me back. I want you to take me back and I want you to let me try to make it right. I want you to let me try to fix everything I broke. You can't fix everything you broke. I can try. I don't want you to try. I don't want you to fix anything. I don't want you to do anything except leave. He shook his head. He wasn't listening. He was still looking at me with his hollow eyes and his hollow face. You were the only good thing in my life, he said. You were the only good thing and I ruined it. I ruined it because I was stupid. I ruined it because I was selfish. I ruined it because I didn't know what I had until it was gone. That's your problem. That's always been your problem. You never know what you have until it's gone. I know. I know that now. I know that now, and I'm trying to fix it. You can't fix it. I can try. No. You can't try. You can't fix it because there's nothing to fix. There's nothing left. There's no Mariage. There's no us. There's nothing. He stood up. He walked to the window. He looked out at the street. I still love you, he said. You don't love me. You love the idea of me. You love the idea of someone who takes care of you. You love the idea of someone who makes your life easier. You love the idea of someone who doesn't ask questions. That's not love. That's convenience. He turned around. He looked at me. His face was wet. Elena, he said. You can't just walk away from 17 years. You can't just pretend they didn't happen. You can't just leave and never look back. Watch me. He took a step four-way road. He took another step four-way road. He was standing in front of me. He put his hand on my shoulder. I pushed it off. Don't touch me, I said. Elena, I said don't touch me. He stepped back. He put his hands in his pockets. He looked at the floor. I'm sorry, he said. You already said that. I know. I'm saying it again. I'm saying it because I need you to hear it. I'm saying it because I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. I heard you. I heard you the first time. I heard you the second time. I heard you the third time. I've heard you 100 times. I've heard you every time you called. I've heard you every time you texted. I've heard you in every message you sent. I've heard all of it. And I don't see a re. He looked at me. He looked at me with his hollow eyes and his hollow face. He looked at me like I was a stranger. What happened to you, he said. You happened to me. You happened to me when you let your ex-wife show up at my hospital bed. You happened to me when you spent 8 months lying to me. You happened to me when you stole from my company. You happened to me when you made me believe I was invisible. I didn't make you believe that. You did. You made me believe it because you never looked at me. You never saw me. You never noticed anything I did. You never noticed the contracts I reviewed or the hours I worked or the things I gave up for you. You never noticed any of it. And then you wondered why I stopped trying. He shook his head. He wasn't listening. He was still looking at me with his hollow eyes and his hollow face. I'm sorry, he said. You already said that. I know. I'm saying it again. I'm saying it because I need you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Stop saying that. I can't stop saying it. Yes, you can. You can stop saying it, and you can walk out that door, and you can never come back. You can do that. You can do that right now. He shook his head. He took a step back. He took another step back. He was standing at the door. Elena, he said. Please. Please what? Please forgive me. No. No what? No, I won't forgive you. No, I won't take you back. No, I won't give you another chance. No, I won't let you fix anything. No. 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 He stood at the door. He looked at me. He looked at me with his hollow eyes and his hollow face. You're making a mistake, he said. No. I'm not making a mistake. I'm making the right decision. I'm making the decision I should have made 17 years ago. He shook his head. He opened the door. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't answer. He walked out. The door closed. I sat on the couch. I looked at the wall. I looked at the pictures I'd hung. I looked at the books on the shelf. I felt something. It was small at first. A flicker. A flutter. A tiny crack in the wall I'd built. I let myself feel it. I let myself feel the weight lift. I let myself feel the door close. I let myself breathe. 3 months passed. I stopped counting the days. I stopped checking my phone for his name. I stopped wondering if he was okay. I stopped seeing. The apartment became mine. Every corner. Every wall. Every shelf. I filled it with things I chose. I hung pictures I liked. I bought plants I could keep alive. I learned how to CK meals that didn't taste like leftovers. I went to work. I did my job. I got a promotion. They gave me a new title and a new office and a new set of contracts to review. I reviewed them all. I found discrepancies. I negotiated terms. I did what I'd always done. The difference was that now I was doing it for myself. My sister came over every weekend. She brought wine and questions and the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. We sat on my couch and watched movies and talked about nothing important. We laughed. We laughed a lot. I'd forgotten how good it felt to laugh. One Friday, she came over with a bottle of champagne. She set it on the counter and looked at me with the face she used when she was about to tell me something I didn't want to hear. What happened? I said. Nothing happened. I just brought champagne. I thought we should celebrate. Celebrate what? You. Being alive. Being free. Being the person you were always meant to be. I looked at the bottle. I looked at her. I looked at the appartement I'd made mine. You want to know what I think? She said. I think you're going to tell me. I think you need to stop talking about him. I think you need to stop thinking about him. I think you need to stop carrying him around in your head like a bag of rocks. I didn't say anything. I looked at the champagne. I looked at the counter. I looked at the light coming through the window. I'm not carrying him around, I said. You are. You're carrying him around and you don't even know it. You talk about him like he's still here. You talk about him like he's still in the room. You talk about him like he's still a part of your life. He's not a part of my life. Then stop acting like he is. I didn't answer. I opened the champagne. I poured 2 glasses. I handed one to her. To being alive, I said. To being free. We drank. We drank and we sat on the couch and we watched a movie and we laughed and we didn't talk about him. The next morning, I woke up early. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. I looked at the sun coming through the window. I thought about what my sister had said. I thought about the bag of rocks. I thought about the weight I'd been carrying. I didn't want to carry it anymore. I picked up my phone. I scrolled through my contacts. I stopped on his name. I looked at it. I looked at the number I hadn't called in months. I pressed delete. The contact disappeared. The messages disappeared. The calls disappeared. All of it disappeared. I put the phone down. I drank my coffee. I looked at the sun. I felt lighter. The next week, I got a letter. It was from the court. It said the case against Rachel had been settled. She'd pleaded guilty. She was going to prison. She was going to be ordered to pay restitution. It said Peter had been cleared of criminal charges. He'd carried with the investigation. He'd testified against Rachel. He'd returned the money he'd taken. He was free. He was free and he was broke and he was living in a motel and he was drinking and he was calling Helen every night and he was still in love with me. I read the letter. I put it down. I walked to the window. I thought about him. I thought about the man I'd married. I thought about the man who'd lied to me. I thought about the man who'd cheated on me. I thought about the man who'd stolen from me. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel relieved. I just felt nothing. And that was okay. That was more than okay. That was the best I'd felt in years. I went to the kitchen. I made coffee. I sat at the table. I looked at the window. I decided to go for a walk. I put on my shoes. I grabbed my keys. I walked out the door. The street was quiet. The sun was warm. The trees were green. I walked to the park. I sat on a bench. I watched the people walk by. A woman sat down next to me. She was older. She had gray hair and a kind face. She smiled at me. Beautiful day, she said. Beautiful day. You look like you have something on your mind. I looked at her. I thought about the question. I thought about the answer. I used to be married, I said. I'm not anymore. I'm trying to figure out who I am without him. She nodded. She looked at the trees. She looked at the sky. You'll figure it out, she said. It just takes time. How much time? However much time you need. I sat on the bench. I sat there for an hour. I watched the people walk by. I watched the birds fly overhead. I watched the clouds move across the sky. I walked home. I walked into my apartment. I closed the door. I looked at the walls. I looked at the pictures. I looked at the books. I looked at everything I'd built. I was happy. That night, I got a call from Helen. I answered. I didn't know why. He's dead, she said. What? He's dead. He killed himself. He hung himself in the motel room. He left a note. He left a note for you. I stood in the middle of the room. I held the phone to my ear. I didn't feel anything. What did the note say? I said. It said he was sorry. It said he loved you. It said he couldn't live without you. It said he hoped you would forgive him. I didn't say anything. I just stood there. Elena, she said. Are you okay? I looked at the wall. I looked at the pictures. I looked at the books. I'm fine, I said. Thank you for telling me. I hung up the phone. I sat on the couch. I looked at the wall. I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel anything. I just sat there. The next day, I went to work. I sat at my desk. I reviewed contracts. I found discrepancies. I negotiated terms. I did my job. I did it well. I came home. I made dinner. I ate. I watched a movie. I went to sleep. The next day, I did it again. The next day, I did it again. The next day, I did it again. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night. I walked to the window. I looked at the street. I looked at the empty road. I thought about Peter. I thought about the note. I thought about the words he'd written. I thought about the hospital. I thought about the emergency contact. I thought about Helen's black wool coat. I thought about the hotel. I thought about the girl in the white sweater. I thought about the liability clause. I thought about the papers. I thought about the boxes. I thought about the moving truck. I thought about the APA meant. I thought about the pictures on the wall. I thought about the books on the shelf. I thought about everything I'd been through. I thought about everything I'd survived. I thought about the woman I'd become. I walked back to bed. I lay down. I closed my eyes. I slept. The next morning, I got a call from my sister. I heard about Peter, she said. Are you okay? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. I am fine. I'm fine because I'm not going to let him take anything else from me. I'm fine because I'm not going to let him ruin my life. I'm fine because I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep living. I'm going to keep being the person I was always meant to be. She was silent for a long time. Good, she said. That's good. I hung up the phone. I walked to the kitchen. I made coffee. I sat at the table. I looked at the window. I looked at the sun. I looked at the sky. I thought about Peter. I thought about the note. I thought about the words he'd written. I thought about the hospital. I thought about the emergency contact. I thought about Helen's black wool coat. I didn't feel anything. I was free. I went to work. I did my job. I came home. I made dinner. I watched a movie. I went to sleep. The next day, I did it again. The next day, I did it again. The next day, I did it again. One day, I was walking home from work. I saw a woman on the street. She was wearing a black wool coat. She was walking with purpose. She looked like she knew where she was going. I walked past her. I didn't look back. I walked home. I walked into my apartment. I closed the door. I looked at the walls. I looked at the pictures. I looked at the books. I didn't think about him. I thought about myself. I thought about who I was. I thought about who I wanted to be. I thought about the future. I thought about all the things I was going to do. I walked to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I looked at the window. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and red and purple. It was beautiful. I watched the sun go down. I thought about him. I thought about the note. I thought about the words he'd written. I thought about the hospital. I thought about the emergency contact. I thought about Helen's black wool coat. I thought about the woman I'd been. I thought about the woman I'd become. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel anything. I felt free. I felt free because I'd made a choice. I'd chosen myself. I'd chosen to walk away. I'd chosen to stop carrying the weight. I'd chosen to stop being defined by him. I'd chosen to be free. The sun went down. The sky went dark. The street was quiet. I stood at the window. I looked at the street. I looked at the empty road. I thought about the future. I wasn't red. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was ready. I walked away from the window. I walked to the couch. I sat down. I picked up my phone. I called my sister. I'm ready, I said. Ready for what? Ready for the rest of my life. She was quiet. Then she laughed. Good, she said. I've been waiting for you to say that. I hung up the phone. I sat on the couch. I looked at the walls. I thought about everything. I thought about nothing. I was ready.